So, John, we're here today to talk about your rig. Can you write it down for us?
I'd be glad to. Well, as you know, I play with a bunch of different bands. Play with the Queen Masterstroke group, which is a Queen tribute group. Play with Meraki, which is an acoustic duo, acoustic electric duo with Sophie Patnode. And I play with the Razor Daisies, which you also play bass for, phenomenal bass player that you are.
Must be a good band.
And great band, as a matter of fact. And I also play with Captain Ray and the Castaways, and I play with the gospel group at the Green Memorial AMI Church. So I got to cover a lot of different territories
Holy
sonically.
Smoke?
And Holy Smoke too. How could I forget that? And anyways, we've been doing a lot of recording with them, and during this quarantine that we've been having, we've been sort of using this rig for broadcasting. Different in different genres and so forth and so on, and a lot of bands have been sending me their tracks that they want to have solos laid on. So this is like a perfect little miniature setup to get going with here.
So we want to start with guitars.
Yeah, we can start with the guitars. We'll start with my number one right here. This is a PRS DGT that I got 3 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. I absolutely love this guitar. It's everything anybody would ever want in an instrument. It does. It covers. You know, if I have to take one guitar to the gig, this covers all the different territory. It's the DGT, so it has the really excellent pickups in it, and it has the coil cutters, so you can get Strat sounds with the humbuckers and so forth and so on.
Do you know what pickups are you at?
They're DGT pickups in this one here. Yep. Rosewood fingerboard. This is the maple cap one. But you know, super stable guitar, fast playing. It's got a great feeling neck on it, and of course it's white, which is one of my favorite colors for a guitar. Yeah, so that's.
You like having the switch down here on that one?
Yeah, you know, once you're playing them, I kind of forget where they are. You know, if I go from one guitar to the other, some Les Paul styles are up here and so forth, but somehow I remember where that is. But I love the PRS tremolos too, because they stay in tune so well.
Mm-hmm.
They sound great. I can't say enough good stuff about this guitar. I use this guitar for the Queen Masterstroke group and Razor Daisies. I can use it for clean Strat stuff. I can use it for, you know, all-out ripping rock stuff. It sounds great. So that's the PRS DGT.
Very cool.
My number two. If anybody ever wonder what's the ultimate Les Paul, I'd put this one in contention. I've owned vintage Les Pauls in the past, and this is just an amazing instrument. In that,
There's a top on it too.
yeah, you know, it's funny. I'm not all that fussy about colors and so forth and so on. Yeah, it matters. You know, I like it that it has a top on it, but what I really look forward to is how the guitar sounds and how the guitar feels. You know. This one's a little bit on the heavier side compared to this. Probably goes about 9 pounds.
But compare that to a traditional Les Paul.
Yeah, well, Les Pauls all over the place. I've had a Les Paul custom that was 10.5 pounds. It was a boat anchor, and it was sent back to the bottom of the sea shortly.
Yeah.
But just everything that you would want a Les Paul to be. This is it. This is a PRS SC58. So this is. Paul Reed Smith's take of vintage Les Paul.
I see you have the brass saddles on here too.
Yeah, the big massive brass saddles. I don't know if you can get the camera close on that, but the thing just rings. The whole guitar is alive and sustains like crazy. You know, you stop tailpiece, you can really load the strings quickly and easily through there. I almost never break strings, but if you do, you can change it. This has the 5708 pickups in them, and they're by people who know PRS guitars and pickups and so forth and so on. They're highly prized. They're super vintage, accurate PAF sounding pickup. They got that nice clank on the top end, but just warm, liquidy, sweet sound coming from them. I had to learn how to play again when I got this guitar, because I have a very hard right hand to really hit the strings hard. And with this kind of like, it really loves it when you coax the tones out of it. You know, you turn the amp up loud and just like, you know, you play dynamically, and it really works well with you.
What do you have strung with?
I use the NYXLs. They do a custom set for me, which is 9.5 through something something. I'm not sure what this is on the bottom. I think it's a 46. Yeah,
So just slightly lighter than regular light.
yeah, they're just slightly, just somewhere in between a 9 and a 10. And this is a shorter scale guitar. This is 25 in scale, so you really could play 10s or 11s on it. And the DGTs, if you order from the factory, those come with 11s. And I get lazy, and it enables me to be a little bit more dynamic on my bends and stuff with a lighter string. These both have the same frets on them. They're kind of a beefy fret, wide, tall fret that I really like a lot. Locking tuners on both, so the tuning stability on these are phenomenal. In the Holy Smoke Band, the engineer, Todd Erickson, loves this guitar because it just has that, what you'd expect a classic Les Paul through a Marshall sound. It just nails it. So this is the SC58. Yeah.
Yeah, and the controls are just like a Les Paul, or do you have
pretty much, yeah. This is you got 2 volumes, 2 tones.
Do you have the coil tap in this one?
No, this doesn't come with a coil tap, but sweet guitar. I'm very, very fortunate to have that one.
Do you have the 9.5s on all your guitars?
Yeah, I use that even on the Strat, or especially on the Strat. Strat's a little, 25.5 inch scale. This is
When
not.
you say Strat, it's
I'm
not
lying.
a Fender.
I'm lying. You caught me. I'll tell you what. This is like, this is not a boutique guitar at all, but it's kind of funny because a company in England owed me some money, and they were jerking me around for a while. So basically, look, just send me a guitar, And they sent me this guitar, which I'm pretty sure is a salesman sample because it's got this perfect quarter saw neck on it, reverse headstock. It's supposed to be sort of Hendrixy because this got the reverse headstock, and it has the pickup that goes the other way.
Right.
And this is just like one of the best Strats I've ever played. I just can't say enough about it. It's I like this style of Strat tremolo just because it's got the 6 screws in it rather than the 2 screws for the fulcrum style. It just seems to have a just more sustained, better sound to it.
Did it come with this silver knob?
No, I just put that on because it looked groovy, I don't know. It just this is a heavy knob, and I put one of those Seymour Duncan super pots in there, so it's like really fast for on and off.
I see you also changed some of these pickups. Wilkinson here,
Yep.
and then Seymour Duncan's on the outside.
Yeah, this is I guess this is sort of a Trev Wilkinson guitar under the vintage brand name. So I've done quite a bit of modification on it, just because I can't leave it well enough alone. So this one also has the Eric Clapton preamp in it. So it has that mid-range. It's got a center detent here instead of another volume control. And so I can get more into Strat land or more into humbucker land with that. Plus a 10 dB preamp here where the tone control is. So if you're on the front end of the stage and you just need a little more something, you got it right there without going back to a pedal or turning your amp up if you're in the middle of a solo. Standard 5-way switch. And as you mentioned, the pickups, I've changed these two out. I never used the middle one anyway. Just never been a big fan of that sound personally. But this one here, I'm more of a David Gilmour style player. So when it comes to Strats, so this one has that nice big fat sustaining lead sound. I can't remember which Seymour Duncan it is, but if you look under Dave Gilmour Seymour Duncan, that's the one that they recommend to get closer to his sound.
But for the neck pickup?
Neck pickup's just a standard SSL1, I think. It's their sort of vintagey single coil Strat style. Great sound, nice. This is exactly what you'd expect that front pickup of a Strat to sound like. It's just got that great funky sound for clean, and you can get into Robin Trower, Jimi Hendrix land when you add a little bit of distortion to it. But this is a lot of fun guitar to play. I put the Hipshot tuners on it, locking tuners on it, which I highly recommend. They're not expensive and they work fabulously, and you can change strings really quick on it if you have to.
Yeah, I'm sure the people at home are going to be asking, what is this going on?
That's a failed Fishman. No, that's one of those Fishman MIDI pickup thingies. It's not MIDI, but it's something but it's a pickup so that you can add string sounds and so forth and so on to get into their, I forgot what they call the system that they have. Anyway, they have something that you can hook up your computer to. It kept my interest for about a day and a half, and I've just been too lazy to take the stuff off of there. But that's what that
Get
was.
back to playing guitar, but
Yeah, if I can figure out how to play guitar, I'd rather invest my money and time into that than chasing down the MIDI stuff.
And got acoustic here too.
Yeah, this is one of my more recent acquisitions. I'm primarily an electric guitar player, but with Meraki, that's at least 75% acoustic. And so I've been looking for an acoustic for years. Usually I just borrow something. We had a gig, but finally my Yamaha rep brought one of these in to show me, and I was pretty floored by it. It plays like an electric guitar. It's got a super skinny fast neck. It doesn't buzz. It's all solid wood. This one's rosewood and with a solid spruce top on it.
It looks slightly smaller than a Dreadnought. It's a little more comfortable that way.
Yeah, I thought I was going to miss the bass from a Dreadnought sound, but when I play on big stages with loud monitor mixes, this thing just cuts through, and I don't get that big howling bass bump that you get when you play out. And
do you have to put a sound guard in the hole?
Most times, if it's a super loud stage, you really have to. But a lot of times I don't, just because either I forget and space to bring it with me or whatever. But the other thing I like about these is, and I've taken Martins and Taylors and so forth and so on out on the road with me, but they have a control panel here that looks like you got to have a pilot's license to fly it. I love this because it's basically just volume, tone, what the hell does that do? I don't remember. And this one here enables you to pick up a model of this guitar recorded in the studio with some fancy microphones. And I'm not much in the modeling thing, but this really works. You can really sort of attenuate the guitar to have a certain tonality that works really well live or in the studio without having to have those studio microphones and so forth and so on. It's super quiet, and it gives you two choices for the sounds that you have on it. I'm still trying to remember what that knob does. It'll come back to me eventually. But it's, again, simple.
Is it like a mic piezo blend or something like that?
No, this only has one pickup in it, so it's not that. And I was going to say is that this has that modeling instead of the mic piezo situation, because the mic situation is stupid, because the minute you think, I'll turn the mic on to get some of that internal mic sound, what ends up happening is you just get feedback, and it sounds like ass. So this does something nicer, and I guess you can just look it up and figure it out. It's an AC5R, wonderful guitar. If you guys ever get a chance to play one, for an electric guitar player, this is definitely the guitar to go for. So that's pretty much it guitar-wise.
Is these all the guitars you bring to gig?
Yeah, pretty much. Once in a while I'll bring my Frankentelly, which, you want to talk about that?
Oh, might as well.
All right. Well, this is sort of my experiment guitar. And it's back when I built this probably 8 years ago when I had to sell all my vintage guitars to pay my bills. Anyway, and I wanted to have like one guitar that, if I could afford to have one guitar that I'd bring in the stage and studio and that would do all the sounds and so forth and so on. By the way, that doesn't actually exist. But this is a wonderful guitar. It's mahogany back on it, one piece. It's a maple cap on it. I've gone through 3 different tremolo systems on it.
What'd you land on?
This ends up being the hip shot. I can't remember what model number of it is, but it's a fulcrum type, so I can do the Jeff Beck, thing. I can do that. Plus it stays in tune really, really well, and it does still retain the sound of the guitar nicely.
This is an interesting pickup.
Yeah, I had 2 of these on there, and I'll probably end up putting that one back on. This is the Seymour Duncan P-rail. So these little dip switches here enable you to go between like a single coil, a P90, or a humbucker, and then when you have 2 of them, you can get any combination of those. So you could have a single coil up front, or a P90 up front, or in the middle position you could have like 2 P90s. So that's super versatile. I just like to experiment and try different sounds. So I had Dan Armstrong, not Dan Armstrong, what's his name? Kent Armstrong, son of Dan, build me this pickup here, which was supposed to be sort of oriented towards Brian May sound, and it's an interesting sounding pickup. It doesn't quite get there for that, and I'm not sure whether I actually totally dig it or not. But it's a good sounding pickup. And he did this interesting thing. I have coil cutters on these two tone knobs, and the thing he did interesting is you can bring in either almost all the windings or all the windings on this pickup. So it gives you like slightly cleaner, less gainy sound, and then full out sound on it. Basic 3-way Les Paul style switch, master volume, which I love. A lot of guys hate having the master volume here, but I just that to me that's like right where it needs to go. So you can get right at it and do violin bows on it and stuff like that.
What about these ones?
These ones here, these are just basic volume controls for each pickup. So you get your master volume for overall, and so I could...
That's nice. So you can blend the pickups and then also have the master volume. Exactly.
Like Gretsch guitars do that, and I always thought that was a really cool feature. So being that I wanted this to sort of be my everything guitar, that's how we ended up on that. The neck was made by... It's U.S. Custom Guitars. There we go. And they do amazing work. This is ebony with a quarter-sawn maple. Again, the hip shot locking tuners on this one too. Danger Will Robinson. You don't want to get in there. I had my buddy Max K help me do the electronics on this originally. And all this wear here, that's real wear. That's not like relict.
No.
And
that's you putting in the hours.
Yeah, and being not super careful with it. My wife painted this lovely shark thing, like the World War II fighter planes. She kind of did that thing for me there, because dun 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 dun, right? Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much it for all the electric stuff.
So what would you say gets used where?
Well. Either of these can go just about anywhere. The two PRSs, I almost always take those to almost every gig I go to, unless it's a little, one night or at a club or something like that. Then I'll probably just bring the white one. For church, for a Green Memorial, I'll either take the white one or this guy here. Alyssa really likes the Strat, so once in a while I bring that one. Stay on the good side of Alyssa.
And the acoustic whenever you need an acoustic.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The acoustic goes with this tone deck right here. The tone deck is made by Fishman. I used to use their amplifiers, and it's just one more thing to carry. And this is amazing. It's like a DI. You go XLR out into the sound system. But you got all your acoustic effects built right in there. You got EQ, you got compression, everything that you ever need. So the sound that you get on stage is what you're sending to front of the house and situation here, and kind of predicated on whatever gigs I happen to be doing. And I've really run out of space, so now other stuff has to go if I decide to get something new. But this, I just got this, and I really want to use it because it's like this does the Eric Johnson thing, the 1,000-pound violin thing really, really well. Plus, I can get like an early British solo sound like a la Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck kind of thing with it as well. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I've run out of space in my pedal board, and this tape that we use here, that's like prying up. It just doesn't want to come up. So anyway, so I've been putting this at the front end every once in a while just to play with it. But these are pretty good because they're completely programmable. So you could even have this. Sound like an OCD if you wanted to, or like I say, you can get in and you can program it to be whatever you want it to be. But it's basically, it's called the Kingmaker Fuzz by Source Audio, and wonderful company that we really enjoy as stereo in and out. Again, you get completely programmable via USB, and it's just a killer pedal. Next in line we have a Crybaby. I think it's the Clyde Wah by Crybaby. You gotta have a wah-wah, right? I'm not much of a wah-wah guy, but when I do, that's the one I use. We have the Super Trem here by Full Tone, and that's just a very cool tremolo pedal, very analog sounding, very reminiscent of like old Fender amps and stuff like that, which we all love.
So what do those side buttons do?
Yeah, so
Specifically?
one is speed, so you can adjust the speed with that, and the other one is hard or soft, so real choppy type of tremolo, or a softer, more vintage tremolo.
So it's kind of like change. I mean, the speed obviously changes the speed, and the hard soft changes
The
depth,
attack,
the depth, or
the attack, more like the attack. So like on a vintage sort of a vintage tremolo, it would be sort of a softer pulse, and this gives you sort of a sharper edge tack, almost like a gate on a compressor kind of a thing.
But for that stuff, you might normally expect buttons. I mean, you might expect knobs rather than buttons.
Yeah, I didn't design the thing. I just bought it because it
I was
sounds
just-
good and it was cheap.
Oh.
Okay.
Fair enough.
They call up Full Tone, whatever his name, Fuller Full Tone. Anyway, so that's the tremolo.
Is that the order that it goes into? The
Yeah.
wah
So
into-
da 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 da. That's the number 2 thing. And then what I've done is a 4 cable system. So what I've done is all the drive pedals are up front, and all the modulation and delay pedals go through the effects loop. So, which is something I did a long time ago before I found out it was cool. It just seems to make sense to me, because if you buy an old Fender Twin Reverb, your reverb sits between the preamp and the output amplifier, and
Right.
that's the way logical order of engineering things. And so by putting your stuff in a good order for best signal management is a good idea. Yeah, so I don't have a ton of drive pedals on here. I have the Galileo pedal, which I only use for. I don't dare kick that thing in at all. In fact, I think I turn all the volume knobs down. It is an exceptionally noisy pedal. It's designed to just do one thing really well, and it does do it very well. It's designed to sound like a wall of AC-30s cranked up.
Yeah.
So it has all this noise associated. So it's like like that, but it does do the job for the getting closer to the Brian May sound.
So that's just for the master.
Just
stroke.
for master stroke. That's the only thing I ever use that for. And like I say, I turn the knobs down in case I hit it inadvertently. The next thing in line is I think it's this guy here, which is a Soul Food, which is basically like a clone of a clone of a clone, or clone of a clone, or whatever. But these came out, and it's I couldn't believe they were like, I think they were like $68 when they came out. Phenomenal. I mean, it's just you can use it just a slight push on the front end of your amplifier just to take you into like a little bit more sustained land. You can get it to distort a lot more, but I don't use it for that. It just adds a little something sweet to the sound. And so whenever I do lead solos and so forth and so on, I like to kick that in. I can't tell you how it works specifically. It just makes everything sound better. So you can use it as a clean boost, and you can use it on your distorted side to add just more special sauce, if you will. It'll take you right into sustainiac sort of C antenna, never-ending noise, if you want that. But we don't use it for that. So I just have it set, at about a quarter, and it does what it's supposed to do.
All you need from it.
Yeah. The 7-Up, I've told you about my sort of love-hate relationship with it. When it's working right, I love it. When it makes noise through the system, I'm not so keen on it. But it basically gives you an octave up and 2 octaves down. And so you can get sort of a polyphonic organ sound with it, or you can just use it for basic octaves. The other thing I like to do is I can just set it the high octave and sort of get that Jimi Hendrix high octave fuzz thing going on. You can use it for that as well. It works really well as that.
Does that still go in the front end?
Yeah, that hits the front end. Yep. And so that's all the pedals that hit the front end, and then the rest of the pedals here. So we've got a Corona chorus, which I have wired in stereo. A lot of these things are wired up for a particular way to be able to easily adapt to the different shows. So anything that's stereo right now will be basically just used for the master stroke 3 amp setup. But most of the time I just use 1 amp. And so it's coming out mono, but everything's wired up stereo up to that point. Anyway, So Corona Chorus, I love these because you can change your sounds. You can actually download different sounds. Really easy to do.
Do you have anything loaded in there right now?
Yeah, I have the Brian May chorus.
Figures.
Surprise, surprise. Loaded in the preset, but they call it tone prints. So I have that one loaded in there. And it does everything a chorus should do. I leave it on a lot more than probably, I'm not like, not for the 80s sort of chorus Van Halen guitar sound, but I have it on very, very subtly almost all the time because it just gives a little bit more 3D kind of a ambience to the sound. I have a 0-point flanger, which is kind of cool. Usually for the flanger, you just kind of set it to whatever vacuum cleaner sound you want and kick it in and out when you're playing Barracuda or something like that. Or Nobody's Fault But Mine. But this one is actually pretty cool because you can actually, the 0-point, it has 2 buttons on it, so you can actually take it to that flange point, which is called the 0 point, when everything kind of lines up in this sort of sonic sweetness. So you can actually control that, so you can actually be in the process of that, which is kind of cool.
You can tell it to get to this point right now.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can let it off so it kind of sweeps, so you can kind of control that dynamically while you're playing. The Bell Epoch, I like these so much. I own 2 of them. It is really the best digital representation of and I'm not even sure it's completely digital, but it's the best. It's the closest thing I can get. When I started playing, we had 100-watt Marshalls and we had an Echoplex, and the Echoplex, I didn't know this at the time. I just wanted to do whatever Jimmy Page was doing with his violin bow thing, and Echo sounded so cool in 1970 because it just so. But your old Marshalls didn't have an effects loop. It also didn't have a master volume. So you plug your Echoplex into that, and it had a booster in it that would actually boost the signal. Now they sell that separately as an EP3 booster. These differently companies make them because it did something nice to the input, so it would enable you to overdrive a little bit sooner because those things were brutally loud, and so you could overdrive it a little bit sooner when you plug an Echoplex in the front end. Plus, you got all your slapbacks, your long delays, your repeats, your sound on sound, all those cool things. So everything but sound on sound is built into this, into a much more manageable, dependable package. But I mean, it really captures that sound.
It's definitely a lot smaller than an Echoplex.
Oh yeah, the last time I saw my Echoplex was somewhere in the early '80s when I drop kicked it across the stage because it died halfway through a song. It just because if it stopped running, your signal chain was gone because it went to the front of the amp and you're all done. So these are awesome, and you can fine tune it as it has a modulation setting on it, which actually replicates, because what an Echoplex was, it had tape in it and went over tape heads, and the further you made this head from that head was the length of your delay. But it was just like a continuous loop of tape, and the tape would degrade over time, and as the tape degraded, it would sort of modulate in a way, so it gave you this sort of almost like a chorus sound. So this actually has that built in, so you can add some of that sort of false chorus into it, which is kind of cool.
Make it fail.
Yeah, and it just I probably leave this on way more than I probably should, but I don't give a shit. So the T2 here, I bought that because it was a real good deal for a reverb pedal, and again, it's one of the TC things, so you can load up whatever reverb you want in it. I think I actually have the Johnny A tone print put in here for my standard reverb, but this is, I guess the way this was designed, they modeled some giant hall in Europe and put it into that pedal and blah, blah, blah. But it does some really cool special effects, but I use it for my standard reverb setting. The Nemesis delay, it's terrible. It's an expensive pedal, and I only use it for one thing. When I do the guitar solo for Master Stroke, it's 3 different settings, so I can get I can get an 800 and a 1600 millisecond delay coming out of that, and then 1 amp drive, so it goes bop, 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 like that, so I can stack sounds. So that's basically all I use that for. I think I occasionally use it for slapback reverb on a crazy little thing called Love, but it's that pedal is hopelessly underused. The AB box there, basically all that is it enables me to hook up the 3 amplifiers in an inexpensive and efficient way.
But it's an AB box, but you have 3 amps hooked up to it. So how you pull that
very,
off?
very, very good question there, Sahib. So so I use it as a AB and a tuner out. So the tuner out is the center amp.
Oh.
So that's dry anyway. So I'm sending the left and right through the Nemesis for the 800 and 1600 second delay.
Where is the AB box in your chain?
Don't ask me that. I did it once and I can't explain it again. I don't know. It works.
What do you have powering all this?
Underneath the hood is you have to remind me of the Big Joe. What is
Big
it?
Joe is a company.
Big Joe, yeah.
Powerbox?
Powerbox something. It's the biggest one that I could get that has isolated megaphorizers in the left-handed widget. But it supposedly each one is like a separate circuit, so it's like running a separate battery on each one. Mm-hmm. It's got tons of power. I never have to worry about it. I could add a couple more pedals on there if I wanted to. And it just lives underneath there and it works. I don't think about it that much. Mm-hmm. But
and the only thing we didn't talk about, this must be an amp channel switcher.
It is very, very perceptive of you, and it happens to go with this.
Oh man, another brilliant segue.
You like that? Okay, so I've been a huge Hughes & Kettner guy for like the last 8 years. I still have my Hughes & Kettner Tubemeister, and most people are used to see the glowing blue box behind me, and it's still one of my favorite amplifiers of all time. But I don't know. It's like I heard, I'm not the first one to jump on any new amp trend or anything like that, because for me, if it works and if it sounds good and if it's dependable, I'm cool with it, But I started out with my first real amplifier was a Marshall Super Lead 100 Plexi, and a completely stupid amp. I mean, it looked cool back in the day. I mean, sort of hearing that Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix had these amps and they were called Marshalls. I didn't know anything about them, and I went to the music store, and the first music store that had one, I went and bought it, and it was, even back then, it was like $900, which in 1970s dollars was a lot of money, and but I used that amp most of my professional career. I mean, like 25 years, and with 2 cabs and the whole bit. But I mean, over the years, you try to tame it down because sound systems got bigger and you didn't want as much stage volume. So you had to turn one of the cabinets backwards and crank that one, and then get up an attenuator and all this other stuff. And it just seemed to and then they came out with really much better master volume amplifiers and so forth and so on. So I ditched that, but I always loved that tone, and there's just nothing like a cranked up Marshall tone. And I started hearing rumblings about, I remember the first place I saw one of these Friedman amplifiers was on the Kennedy Honors Show when they honored Led Zeppelin. And they had Hart doing Stairway to Heaven, and the lead guitar player, poor bastard, had to play the solo to Stairway to Heaven right in front of Jimmy Page. Right? You don't want to be making any claims in that, but I saw, what's that amp he's using? It's a Friedman, and it's like, what's a Friedman? And so I started looking into it. So apparently he has been, doing mods on amps and building pedal boards and amps for, a lot of California guitar players for ages, famous people like Phil X, and name some people. The guy who plays in Billy Idol's band, Steve Stevens, and I don't know, a bunch of guys. Anyway, I never really got a chance. There was nobody around here who had them, so I'd go play one. And one of my friend guitar player said he just got a Pink Taco, which is a Friedman amp, and I was saying how much he loved it. So finally I had an opportunity to get one of these and check it out, and well, I'll tell you what, this thing is insanely good. I don't know where he got his skills building an amplifier, but I mean, I have played literally through everything. It's probably not it's not a general purpose amp like going out and buying a Fender Deluxe or something to kind of know what you're getting. It's a very specific amplifier. if you want, a real Marshall plexi tone, but at a volume that you can use it at any gig, and tone and dynamics like really otherworldly. I mean, the first night I played out with this amplifier, I was like, whoa, I could really hear. The reason I got these guitars, I could really hear the different sounds of the pickups way better than I ever had before. The something about his effects loop is super transparent, so now I'm hearing the pedals the way I can hear them, and so I could actually turn some of them down, and it truly has that 3D tube amp sound that everybody talks about, wanting and so forth.
The reason you get a tube amp.
Exactly, the reason you spend that kind of money to get a real tube amp. Now this one here, this is the Runt 50, and it's 50 watts. Literally, I have never turned this amp above 2. 2 is ridiculous.
Yeah,
but the thing is,
it looks like the volume knobs are off.
Well, yeah, I mean, this literally, that's the master right there, and that's where I play with most of the bands I play with. So it's a 2-channel amplifier. It's a printed circuit board. It's not point to point. I don't care. Again, I don't care about all that stuff. I think people, breathe the ether of that sort of boutique-y thing a little bit too much. But that's my opinion. So, but it's an EL34 based amplifier, which is which is Marshall all the way. And I'm not sure how he does his tone stacking, but first of all, what makes this different from a Marshall is that it has that sort of DNA in it, but you can go so many more different places with it. You can do sort of that 70s classic rock sound, big open, Jimmy Page-ish kind of chord sound, or you can get into that 80s sound with, super overdriven and everything, and really everything in between. It does all those things really excellently. The EQ, unlike a Marshall, really works. I mean, you can spin a knob on a Marshall and think that something's happening, but the only thing that really works on it, as far as I'm concerned, is the volume control. But the EQ is awesome on it. The gain control is amazing. You can take it, you can just fine tune it exactly where you want it, the amount of sustain, the amount of gain that you want on your guitar with different guitars, so you can get it to react differently and so forth. So I'm loving the effects loop in this thing. I'm loving the sound of it. The channel 2 is like a sort of a very American Fendery twin reverb sound. I mean, they don't give you a ton of EQ options, but it just pristine, clean, go for it.
So it has a good clean tone.
Oh yeah, which and the 50
hard
watt.
to get from a Marshall.
Well, I don't know if that's made of unobtainium. I had a JVM 100 that had a pretty good clean sound to it, but the distortion sound wasn't. Anyway,
So what's this going into?
Well, these are all just for looks for when we do the TV shows and so forth and so on. But what I generally take to the gunfight is this. It's not really a Vox cabinet; it's a generic cabinet, 212 cab. Years ago, I got a Marshall. I can't remember what the model is, but it was like a 20-watt hand-wired tube thing that sounded great when you turned it all the way up, but it was too loud to play anywhere with, so that didn't last too long. But it came with this cabinet that was 212 cab and had some speakers in it. I noticed that I really, really liked the tone of the speakers. And they're Celestion G12H Heritage speakers made in England, and I was fortunate enough to get 2 of them, matched pair, and you can't get them anymore. They're hard to find, they're expensive. But they really sound amazing. They're somewhere in the vintage 30, Celestion vintage 30 range as far as the overall tone, but they're just a little bit less tubby. They don't quite have as much low-end push to them, and they break up a little bit more like a 25-watt greenback. So they kind of do a lot of things very well. I'm a big fan of ceramic magnet speakers versus Alnico, which is more, Fender vintage kind of a thing. But absolutely swear by those speakers, and eventually I'll put them in a vertical cap so I can get them up higher, so I can hear what I'm doing when I'm playing with loud drummers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Yeah, so that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so we got guitars, we got pedals, we got the amp and the cab. Anything we're missing? Or
Nope. Nope.
no fun toys that you use?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Two things. My slide, it's a, I'm not sure what brand it is, but it's conical. So when you have it, I wear it on my pinky, and so it's got this angle to it. So when you go over the edge, it's a little bit easier for me to use anyway. It's heavy brass. It's a Dunlop 231, but it's got a great tone to it. You have to use it very lightly because on 9.5 gauge strings, it's you can push down to it. And yes, I did drink the Kool-Aid. I used the Eric Johnson / Joe Bonamassa Jazz 3s. I just think they sound great. They're a smaller pick, so it's easier to hang on to. And for the Queen group, I use these. These are made by a company called VPEC, and it's like holding a rock in your hand, but I think it's some kind of acrylic, and it has a great, Brian May uses a coin, and so he gets a lot of attack from that and with a serrated edge. So they actually put a serrated edge on these for me. They're pretty expensive, but you'll lose it before you wear it out. But it's got a great attack to it, and after a while you get used to them. Yes, that's picks. That's pretty much it.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Doing this
Thanks,
with
man.
us.
Take care.
Yeah.
Rock and roll.
Later.
Yeah. Here. Yeah. Ooba dooby.